Hello, YouTube. My name is Burning Dry Ice, and you may or may not have heard me before. If you do not know who I am, let me explain a little bit. I've been in the JTO community since 2019, and I have built a surplus of towers during my time in the JTO community. I first found it out through Kaneko Kitten's video on Thanos Tower and Citadel of laptop splitting all the way back. And I got hooked. I mean, the game has a very, you know, a very brilliant idea behind it. The game's concept is utter genius. Oberntune had a wonderful idea, but that's beside the point. I have met a lot of friends along the way. And like I said, I built a lot of towers. But at the end of my journey, I kind of regret it. I, there's a lot of things that I regret about it, actually. But let's start with what I don't regret about it. Here's what I do not regret. First, I made a lot of friends through tower building. I had met many, many good friends, actually, that I can think of off the top of my head right now, all across the years. And I do not regret the friends I have met because I love them deeply and I cherish my friendships. And if you are watching this video, you know who you are. And that's to a multitude of people. If you are watching this video and we have collaborated on towers or other projects together, or if we have met through towers, you mean a lot to me. And I appreciate your company along the way. So I do not regret that part. I also do not regret the skills that I unironically gained from uh, the tower scenes, such as leadership skills. Um, I had, I am currently an owner of a fan game called Soul Crushing Containment Unit, and I had also been an owner for Azzy's House of Soul Crushing Towers, both decently large fan games, uh, with 50,000 to 100,000 visits each. And I became really good at leadership, and it helped me understand how leadership works in this perspective. And another thing that I don't regret is that I had a lot of creative freedom, especially after stopped building exclusively for Ito. You know, I had so many ideas, and it helped me, you know, put my mind out into something that people can experience. That was very rewarding. So that is what I do not regret. But why do I regret it if I have had a lot of positive experiences? It's less about the tower building itself and more about the involvement. And part of this is definitely on me in my earlier years, but let me explain. I took it way too seriously. When I first started building a tower back in 2020, which ultimately became Tower of Peace and Chaos, you may or may not have heard of it. That's beside the point. I I was really fascinated by the idea of it, and I was incredibly passionate for said project. I ultimately spent 9 months, sweat in tears, which is a bit of an exaggeration, but I spent so much emotional energy into this. And I don't want to insult my former self, but I probably could have used that time for something better. For example, I remember getting harassed a lot because the theme was somehow similar to augmented misery, despite me not having any correlation with it. And obviously, these days, now that I'm a lot older, that wouldn't really affect me. That wouldn't really care for me. But this was like, I was like a vulnerable, like 14-year-old when I was making Topak, and that did have an effect on me. I was putting all this emotional energy into a project that people could just easily so spit on. And that's ultimately how the internet is. A lot of artists would know this in all fields of art. But one of the reasons why I regret it is I put emotional energy into spaces that didn't necessarily appreciate it. Now, ultimately, when you, this is more Ito exclusive or larger fan games, but they don't love you back. You're replaceable to them. It doesn't matter if I built or didn't build for it because there will always be other people who build for it. The system does not care for you. Maybe the individuals who are a part of the development team do. I'm not saying they are disrespectful or ungrateful or whatever, but the system as a whole does not. And considering I was like 13, 14, 15 during the time, that hurt. That really did hurt for a long while because I gained this mentality of this loop that I needed to contribute because I appreciated the game and you could build for it. And during that time, it was a little smaller. So, you know, your efforts did contribute a bit more than what they probably do today. And I'm not hating on any staff members or anything like that. I quite frankly, I don't give a care about anything. The reason why I'm making this video is for people to reconsider if they want to build, but I'll get to that at the very end. That's one reason. So it essentially hijacked my brain. But you could say, well, you should just take accountability for that. Of course, yes. And I have spent a long time uh kind of unlearning that pattern of that cycle. And it's not necessarily exclusively J-Toad's fault. I'm not saying it is. But if you are, say, someone who is more emotionally weak or vulnerable or deprived of care, or for whatever reason, then it can be a loop. And that is a little dangerous. And another reason why I regret it is the amount of time I have spent in it because of the loop. I spent a long, long, long time building towers. And at the end of the day, nobody can really name them except like a handful. I've made quite a decent handful. Again, I've made Tower of Peace and Chaos, but I've also made other towers that you may have heard of, such as Tower of Inner Turbulence and Unreal with a world record of floor 10, Steeple of Jeopardized Romance, which a popular video was made out of recently. Thank you, Orbs. I appreciate it. Um, in a surplus of other towers. Tower of Diversified Odysseys, which is the tower I have whitelisted for ATOS. Um, And even like if I were to name off everything I've done, I have a whitelisted tower in ATOS, which I just said, whitelisted tower for CSCD. I have a surplus of towers in Azzy's house, soul crushing towers, like over seven something. And I even have like the old owner of Tower Game, not the new one, but the old owner literally synapsed an April Fool's Tower I made with my friend Z-Man 2006 OP. And I think that is really, really funny. Like, I think that's really funny that out of all the things I made, an April Fool's Tower got synapsed. And ultimately, I just don't think the amount of energy I put into it was worth it at all. I neglected some of my other hobbies during the time, and I have more now, but like I was really passionate for astronomy. I still am. I love astronomy. I had all sorts of other passions. During this time I was doing art, I kind of stopped. I might reconsider. And, I stunted my language learning. I sorry, I'm out of breath right now. I just finished working out. But you get the point. You get the point. I neglected other parts of my life that I could have invested in to build onto my future. And I'm still really young in the grand scheme of things. But if I was locked in, like if I forced myself to lock in, I could probably be making like, shoot, I could probably be some like brain surgeon or something if I spent the amount of time I did invested it, well, not exclusively, but if I spent like the amount of time I did invested into like Roblox projects, which never reaped any fruits back to me, I'd be much better off. I and ultimately this isn't something I'm not blaming, like I said, I'm not blaming it as the sole cause of things. Tower building as like the sole factor to all of my problems, but it definitely contributed. And I do wish that there was more warning to this. And that's my third reason why my third warning or regret is that the cycle is kind of enforced onto itself because like I regret building for something like I said that doesn't really love you back, but it's like hold on, I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. Hold on. Let me think. I'm sorry. Okay, another thing that I regret is that I feel like at the end of the day, I contributed to like the slop machine and and the warnings or whatever. Let me first talk about the slot machine. You know, I'm not. There's a community. There's several that I can think of. Top Towers community and Soul Crushing Leaderboard project, I believe. And when I see these things, I'm not hating on in anybody in particular, but I just see like, there are people with like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of soul crushing towers, like slop, good, peak, whatever, like all sorts of quality. And it's like I fear that when I have made as many projects as I have, I am contributing to like an addiction of someone, like gaming addictions. And I know that, I can't baby proof every single thing I do in my life because that's just unrealistic. And being the owner of two large fan games, I saw, communities and all sorts of things. And it's like, I don't know everybody's life, so I'm not judging, but it's like I just fear that all of this grinding and all of these things, and when I have something that I make myself, it's like, am I contributing to someone's addiction, or am I being a stumbling block? Or does it even matter? Like, is my small singular thing going to mean anything or not to the addiction? I don't know. But at the end of the day, maybe I don't have to worry so much about that because ultimately, after all that I've made, barely anybody even plays my stuff in the first place. So, eh, maybe not. And as for the warnings that I was talking about, I really wish that Ito or Jato or whatever made warnings of like, don't get too sucked into this, don't do this or that. And, it's not necessarily their sole responsibility to make sure everybody's in like a good state of being. It's just that the system that it relies on can easily create addictive um addictive cycles, that addictive mentality. If I just do it this time or this time or this time, if I make something better, or or like if I make the greatest or this or that, that's problematic. And you can say at the end of the day, like, I just needed to take more accountability for myself. But keep in mind, a lot of these people, it's not just me, it was my friends, it was community members. I saw people starting to like evaluate their self-worth over freaking Roblox hobbies. And nobody really stopped that. I mean, there were people that did, but it's like that ties into something else that I want to bring up. Is that when I made my first point about, taking my work somewhere that'd be appreciated, I mean that the community, you could be the greatest builder of all time and you would still get hate because ultimately, at the end of the day, this is a rage game. But not everyone has the mental fortitude of a war veteran to take in a lot of that hate, especially if you were like me when I was like 14, 13, when I initially put the most amount of effort into it. Seeing people just dismiss or hate for one reason or another, it was pretty demotivating. And I have to be a little honest. Some of it was self-inflicted, not because I wanted hate, but because I was a little bit of a contrarian when it came to the standards of building. Um, I built what I wanted to see in towers, and it was unconventional compared to most things. And honestly, even like when I was like making Tower Brainiac Attack when I was like 18, it still did kind of hurt a little bit that people were hating on it, or Tower of Diversified Odysseys. And it's like it didn't affect me as much, but I still remember like when I first submitted it to Ito, everyone there was like over 7+ people in like including verified builders and everything, and they were just like trashing on it. And it's like I didn't really care. Like, oh no, I'm so sad. But that kind of bothers me how people can just like have no self-awareness of that. And probably my last point for today is it doesn't really do much for your back. If you make like one, two, maybe even up to five towers, it doesn't really matter. Like, it's good for your brain to brainstorm the kind of work that it takes on the psyche to make a tower. It's definitely a good creative process overall. I do believe that it's good for your brain, but um hold on. I forgot my train of thought again. I'm sorry. I do apologize for this awkward commentary, but what I was saying was like I'm doing this all in one go. I can't just look back. I was talking about people hating, and it did bother me. Oh, yes, I remember. At the end of the day, this doesn't really reap much fruit. All right, for some reason, I was running out of time for that, so this is a take three, or not take three, take two. Um, as I was saying, you can do one, two, maybe even up to five towers, and that's fine because it's good for your psyche, as I was saying. But at the end of the day, it's not going to mean much. And what I mean by that is that a lot of good stuff ultimately ends up rotting, which I did contribute to not let that happen through the fan games. But like, I've done it all. I've made, I've made a surplus of towers, like I already said, two fan games, or contribute. I didn't create them first, but I did it, whatever. Two fan games, two like I've even have one tower confirmed for a major fan game, community top towers and everything. And at the end of the day, I don't think it was worth it. And I don't think it was worth it because I neglected a decent amount of my other hobbies that I've had over the years, like astronomy, language learning, psychology, um, and many, many more, mostly all within STEM. And if I had used the time, creative effort, the dedication in that, and if I guided myself differently, I would be in a undeniably a better off place than I am right now. I can't get too mad at myself because I'm still young and I still have time. But I don't know if it was worth it with the amount I did because I've made over 10, maybe even over 20 towers, including the slop. But in terms of like high quality, let's see, one, two, three, four, five, six, hmm, at least six um towers that I have put a decent amount of effort into. And if I just put that effort into elsewhere, like I said, I'd probably be having like a high paying job by now. I'd probably be like really well off. Not ultra well off. And I'm not saying like that's the only reason why I'm not. But if I had a different mentality, if I developed my mentality in a more healthy way than getting it dragged into a worse state, through Roblox hobbies, I would have been better off. So, if you are someone who wants to tower build, I don't want to scare you off or to be nihilistic or any of that. I don't want to crush your spirit, but I want you to think about it. Is this worth it? Why am I doing this? If you're doing it for praise, then take your take your efforts elsewhere because you will be ripped to shreds. Your confidence will be ripped to shreds if you are not fortified in the psyche. And ultimately, if I had a son or daughter and they were roughly my age when I started, I wouldn't discourage them. I wouldn't be like, "Oh, you need to be a you need to study to be a doctor," or anything like that. I would just be like, "That's really cool. Just make sure that what you're doing is going to benefit you long run." And this has, in a lot of ways, this still has benefited me in a lot of ways. Like um, my friends who I built with and like who I've met over the years through hobbying. I've met a lot of great souls. I've also met a lot of terrible souls, but to those who have stuck with me and those who have been in my journey, you know who you are. Thank you. I appreciate you a lot. And I've made a lot of good memories overall. I remember when something like Tower Polychromatic Zero was being made, that we do laser tag. And I remember one time in Tower of Uncanny Agony, when Lightsynth was reviewing it, uh, I was given B tools to balance it as he was playing it on the later floors so that he'd give it a better score. Yeah, um, that was fun. And I've made so many friends. Like, I've met, you know, like probably lifelong friends, to be honest, from this. I've I've seen big and little games. I've met so many people from across the world and gained so much insight on different mindsets and perspectives from it. And that was incredible. My time is wrapping up and it's late now. It's dark out. It's late, dark. Just think about it. I don't want to discourage people. I don't want to, you know, spoil the party. But all I'm saying is be wise about it and have intention in what you do now, especially if, you're like 13, 14 or whatever, so that you don't regret it later, like what I have. Have a blessed day. And remember, each and every one of you are loved and cared for. Goodbye, YouTube.